Hello everyone, I'm Ann Dale, owner-operator of My Sewing Room, located in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. Welcome to 2024 Kimberbell Digital Dealer Exclusives Month 5. Today we're going to be working on the Paisley in Bloom belt bag. It's adorable. Let me show you. It's a sweet little zipper pouch. And one of the new accessories is the cinch bag belt. So you could use these pieces anywhere. These are two separate projects. I'll show you when we get to the supply list. Not two separate projects, pardon me, two separate kits. So you can use one without the other, use them together, and that's our project today, is how to make a belt bag. We've got so much to do today. There's going to be a couple options. We're going to show you how to multi-hoop with a 5x7 hoop, which a lot of embroidery machines have. We're also going to show you one hooping if you happen to have a machine that takes a much larger hoop. We're going to do a single hooping and multi-hooping so that everybody is happy today. There's a few things that we're going to need that I'll share with you in just a moment. And I hope you enjoy this program. If this is your first month joining us, you will enjoy learning Kimberbell's multi-hooping process. It's slick. You'll like it. I'm sure you will. Then if you, like I said, have a large embroidery machine, we'll show you that way. If you haven't been with us before and you decide that you might like to join us for the entire year lineup, which will be completely recorded like this program so that you're not alone when you give these things a try. The bonus design makes this adorable What's the Buzz key fob. It would make a great zipper pull as well. You can break it up into its components and use it for different things. One of the really cute things is there's about the size of a key fob, but it's actually a little chapstick holder or a little lipstick holder, whatever you need in the winter to make yourself happy, or even in the summer. It's awfully dry where I live, so we can use our chapstick year round. So let's get started. Please meet me over at the cutting table where we'll go through the supply list and get going. We're just going to go through some of the things. This is the project, and this is the Kimberbell poster. So you may have seen this imagery around town. The bag that I made, I've used a gorgeous terracotta for the little flowers and a nice camel color for the background Paisley quilting there. We're going to show you how to achieve sewing in this lovely belt bag. Show you how to put all the hardware together, where the hems are, where the lengthening and shortening work here. So many good things. So here is Kimberbell's belt bag kit. That's just the hardware. Then our next one is the zipper pouch blank. So there's some suggestions on using it, just putting a simple embroidery on it. And you can make a great zipper pouch for, utensils, makeup, sewing tools. It's quite large. The overall size is 10 by 7. And the nice thing here is fully lined and the zipper's inserted. So for those of you who are not fans of zipper insertion, it already has a zipper in there. That makes life just a little easier for some of us. So those are the blanks that we're going to focus on this month. Some of the other unique little things. These are your standard, everyday, let me bring it up a little bit closer to the camera, thumbtacks. We may not have used those in a long time, but here we go. I've got mine on a piece of sticky tape so they don't go wandering away. I've also got my Kimberbell scissors toolkit. That will come in handy today. We've got a couple spools of thread, I'm going to be using a camel and a kind of denim-y aqua blue to create the flowers this time. Some Kimberbell stitching tape. Water-soluble marker will come in handy, and a little bit of fray check. Fray stop, fray no more. This stop fraying product comes under many different names, but the one that I carry and the one that I like is fray check. Then we're going to be using fusible woven to just beef up the back of the bag a little bit. So I've got a couple pieces of that ready. In my bag from earlier, I had a lovely terracotta fabric to make this opening where we insert the belt. But in this project, I'm going to actually be using a fabric that's a little closer in tone without the color, and see how I feel about having this as a more neutral colored opening than coordinated to the thread I used. You have to make the choices for yourself. One of the other items on our supply list that says Kimberbell says we might find handy is a wool mat. Now, a lot of us have those, but not everyone does. What I have in my hands here is embroidery pressing sheet, which is going to work fabulously when we need that wool mat and if we need to iron out our embroidery in any fashion. So an embroidery pressing cloth. And of course, my hoop. I'm going to use 2 hoops today, do two separate demos. If your machine is a little smaller and you need to work with a 5x7 hoop, you're going to need at least 4 pieces of sticky back wash away stabilizer. Sometimes Aqua Mesh Plus, Aqua Mesh Sticky, so many different names for stabilizer, but the difference is we've got the wash away stabilizer adhered to paper, and this will be quite sticky in here. That really helps us with multi-hooping and keeping things down solid when we start to stitch them. So you may need 4 of those to complete all of your embroidery with a 5x7 hoop. So you'll need 4 that fit that hoop. If you're working with a larger hoop, you need, at least 10-inch square. Something to do 7x10. 8x12 is one of the size frames that fits my machine. 10x10, 10x16, a larger hoop for later. So let me get set up to do some pressing. That'll be the first step today, rather than charging over to the machine, because we'd like to have a little conversation about that. So give me a minute to set up for pressing and we'll get to it. Okay, so here's my lined zipper pouch. If it's got any creases from shipping, you may want to take those out now. If they are particularly stubborn creases, we have a lovely product on the market. share that with you. Flatter is a product that doesn't starch up the fabric. It just leaves it nice and soft, same as it came to you. But it will take out some heavy wrinkles, sometimes from packaging and shipping. I'm just going to put a little bit of spray on each of those creases. There's kind of one up here and a big one down here. I'm not really doing the whole item because it doesn't really need flatter everywhere, just on those particular creases. What flatter does is relaxes the fibers and it allows us to press out that crease super simple. So it really doesn't often like to come out just with an iron, and sometimes not with an iron and steam even. So I'm just pressing those dry. Looking nice. Yeah. So flatter will help you take creases out, or even put creases in if you need to get a nice fierce crease into something. But what it doesn't do is add stiffness. To add stiffness, you're going to want something like Mary Ellen's Best Press. That will add some stiffness, which is often quite handy in embroidery, but we don't really need it for today's project. Okay, so the outside of the bag's nice and flat now. I'm just going to give a quick press on my zipper there. Sometimes from manufacturer, they're a bit wavy. But I'm just going to start with everything nice and flat. So, what we'd like to do is, I'm going to just turn this here, and I'm going to lift the lining out of the way. This is the inside of the bag. And I had previously cut some 7x10 pieces of the fusible woven. And what I'm going to just lift up the seam allowance here, tuck that edge there, and I am going to center it just inside here. So there's really no fusible woven to the edge, but it will be inside the seam allowance, but not 100%. And then we're just going to take our time and hear this. Make sure you follow the directions on the product that you have. All right, so something you should keep in mind when you're fusing something like a backing or an interfacing to a product is if you pick it up while it's hot, you're going to disturb the fusing. Leave it in place and let it cool. Okay, so now this is all pressed, cool. We won't disrupt that great pressing we have in there. In case you've never used a paper-backed stabilizer before, let me help you through there. Make sure that you open your hoop a little more than normal because the bulk of the paper makes it difficult. Center your piece over the middle of the hoop. Then the tricky bit is getting this pressed down inside. The paper likes to resist and it likes to jump out. Sometimes even just going in and giving these a little extra crease can help. Just going to pick it up and make sure that I'm all the way in, all the way around. And then I'm going to slip in here, tighten that before it jumps again. Finger tight is good. If your fingers aren't as strong as they used to be, by all means use your screwdriver. I'm just checking that I've got this inserted all the way which usually leaves a little smidge sticking through. Then I also will just go in and press that down a little bit. And then something that I like to use, either my stiletto to just perforate the paper just a little bit, then to slide under there, and doing it in the X, and you tear from the middle out, and you don't want to press so hard that your whatever tool you use for scoring goes through the stabilizer, and that's definitely a possibility on the tearaways especially. Now I've got sticky all the way around here. And we're just going to head on over to the embroidery machine. Join me there. Just going to bring up the first section on my screen. So load the design in there. The first round, I'm going to go through multi-hooping on the belt bag. So here, our first color is actually going to be that sort of neutral camel color. And because it's a fine line embroidery, I am going to pick a coordinated bobbin to go with my upper thread. So it's a bobbin weight thread pre-wound. Mine are from Wonderful. We love those in the machines that they fit in. They are awesome. So that camel thread was sort of a camel bobbin, still 60 weight. I'm going to put that in first. All right, so 5x7 embroidery hoop. Selected the first 5x7 embroidery design. Color step number 1. All right, so now we have what's known as a placement line, just stitched directly onto our stabilizer. Now we need to do a couple little things to our pouch, so meet me over at the cutting table. Zipper pull on our left side, zipper's closed on the left side. We're going to fold the zipper pouch blank in half, perpendicular to the zipper. So we're just going to bring that over here, and I'm just going to work that line in here. We're going to make sure that all the lining, however, is up and out of the way. This might be one of those places that you add a clip, something just to manage the fold. There we go. So this is fold A. Now, one of the best tips I can give you, everyone, is if your folds and project looks exactly like the Kimberbell pictures, you're heading the right direction here. So, fold A. Now I'm heading back to the embroidery machine. Join me there. Okay, so we've got that initial placement line. We've got fold A. Fold A is going to be lined up along that line there. And the zipper is the middle and top of the bag. You can feel it. You can't quite see it through here. I've got the lining at the very top of that original placement line. There's a little elbow up here. And basically, this is the first half of the embroidery. So all the excess pouches to the top here, lining the other side. I'm just going to gently peel this back and just finger press the top of the bag into the sticky hoop. Never push where there's nothing firm underneath. So I'm just going to release that from the arm so I can just get down here and give a very solid press to all the pieces. Then our next color step 2, it's actually a basting line. So if you have a really good color match, say to this fabric, and you're a little worried about getting it out of the baste later, now might be the time to change that. So I'm going to just drop my foot here. I can see where the needle's going to land. It's landing pretty close to the zipper, but that's very similar to the picture in our notes. And I know the embroidery is going to be below that, so let's give it a try, shall we? We can always change your mind. So I love this. What I was able to determine in that stitch out, I bring it all the way down here where the camera's likely to see it. That basting line landed exactly on top of the top stitching of the zipper. So this is nice and straight. Quite pleased with that placement. Now, color step number 3 is the actual quilting background. So if now, and you've been using the color of choice and you don't like it in the basting, you're not going to like it in the quilting. So you have one opportunity to change colors now. So let's quilt out that beautiful pattern on the first half of our bag. Okay, color step number 4 will be the color that you choose for the floral part. So the more solid flowers, and as I said, I've chosen this sort of aqua denim-y blue to go with our camel. Now, in the other programs, I've often given you a supply list with color numbers. In this one, I didn't because it's 2 colors. One of them is somewhat of a neutral on the background, and then a color for the flowers that you might like. But if you do like the colors that we used, they are part of the thread supply list for the all 12 projects. So you will find the colors listed in the complete list. Color step number 4, flowers. Woo. Okay, so now we're done. We have one little thing to add here. Color step number 5 are those little registration marks that are going to help us in our hooping. I think that I'm going to do them in the blue that I have in. Just they'll be a little easier to see. So maybe with the zoom, you'll be able to see it. Just as a little elbow at the top and the bottom here. And that's going to help us in the next step. Okay, some of our special instructions now is to remove the tack down stitches. Now, if you remember, that's the ones here. The ones that I would absolutely remove maybe now would be the easiest is this top section, because this down the side here and across the bottom, that tack down line is actually going to be lost in the seam allowance later, so I don't feel compelled to remove that. That's just extra work for me. But I will remove the basting from up here, and careful not to disrupt the registration marks there. And what we're going to do then is remove the project from the hoop and trim off all the excess stabilizer because it will just be in the way now. And if it's easier for you to unpick with this in the hoop, by all means, sometimes it is. If it's more difficult, then by all means, take it out of the hoop first. Whatever's going to work for you. And for me, in this case, I'm going to pop it out of the hoop to remove that basting. Which hopefully, with the magic of television, doesn't take very long. But it's just that dark colored basting stitch up here. The tricky bit is, remember I said it's placed so nicely up there, it's actually on top of the top stitching. I don't want to pull it out. There we go, success. So I just removed the upper section of basting from earlier, the tack down stitch, and now I'm just going to go. Just going to fold this back on itself. Remember, this is a wash away. It will all be removed later, 100%. We're not trying to get in under the embroidery and remove it. Just enough that it's not in the way. This corner's loose, and I'm actually going to remove that. There we go. Perfect. All right, so we are going to hoop one more hooping for the 5x7. So we're hooped and ready to go. Let's meet you at the sewing machine. I have to go back and load in the second part of the 5x7. Same beige in the bobbin. I'm going to switch out from the aqua, I think, for that first placement line, in case it gets trapped and caught in the embroidery later. that camel color shows a little less overall than the blue does. So color step number 1 is a placement line. And it's the registration marks, which in the last piece were blue. So there's some placement markings here and registration markings. All right, so let's head back to the cutting table and we'll take a look at multi-hooping. Okay, everyone. Kimberbell has an ingenious little way of putting in their registration marks and achieving multi-hooping effects. So what that looks like for us, it's a little hard to see on camera, I know, but in this corner up here, got a little elbow, another little elbow here, and a straight line here. What we're going to do is we're going to take those fun little thumbtacks and we're going to push them through the registration mark right into that corner. If you do it right, you're actually going in and out of the same needle hole. And remember, my thumbtack had that little bit of tape on it. Well, I find that I can see a little better coming from the bottom up, where Kimberbell has you flip over and push your thumbtack from the bottom down. Whatever works for you. It's just important that you get them right where they belong. And for me, I can see through the stabilizer. I can see exactly where that hole is, and I can get my thumbtack up through that. Now, you don't want to press hard from the bottom. You don't want to rub real hard on these pieces of tape. You can distort your hooping, and then all of this would be a waste of effort. So I just get in here and press a little bit so that Kimberbell tape, and all I've used is a bit of this Kimberbell embroidery tape. All right, so now I have my 2 thumbtacks in. I've got the hoop placed right side up. And now we've got our project from earlier. And what we want to do is we've got these bright aqua little elbows here that we stitched in at the end. So these are the registration marks. So we want to line these ones up on top of the ones in the hoop, and then we're going to embroider out the other half with some perfect placement. It's quite ingenious, really. So like I said, I feel like I know more of what I'm doing from the bottom to the top. Kimberbell has slightly different directions, but the goal will be to get this in the hoop. Now, folding it back so you can see on the back where that registration mark is. And you want to get the thumb tuck right through that corner, exactly where that stitch was. And it's easier than it sounds. I might be making it look more difficult, but I'm trying to make sure that everything is on screen for you. And good news is you can lift and poke till you find the exact placement. Now, if it would help to get some of the bag out of the way, you might be able to. A little less fabric to manage. And I'm so close to that thumbtack, I can feel it, but I know I'm not quite where I want to be. Ooh, this one might be it. Yep, got it. Then this part here, if I got that in exactly the same spot as I did last time, for straight, it would help. And I kind of feel like I got that. Oh, okay, pop that one off. Might have wanted that, just, I might have wanted to take that in from the top. That might have helped me from popping it out. But it's just a little bit of practice. I got it once, I can get it twice. There we go, right there. And then just gonna lift that up a little bit so that I can get it nice and smooth. Lift that side up so I get it smooth. So straight across there. So no lining on the hoop. All of the lining and the bag should be free from the hooped area. Now we've got that down. I'm going to just give that a nice finger press onto the sticky. Then the next part is to remove the thumbtacks without having this dislodged. So this is nice and stuck on now. It won't be too difficult. I flip those over, and quite often if I just grab that tape and if it's stuck well to the thumbtack, it just comes off nice and easy there. And if not, pull the tape off. Well, that one came up nice and easy as well. Such a simple way to do this, you guys. I can tell you from someone who's been stitching for a while. Sometimes multi-hooping, it's not that simple. All right, so just going to close up that zipper, gives it a little more stability. I'm going to take it back to the machine. Back at the machine, I've got the camel color in, I've got a camel bobbin in there. It's not the same thread. The same thread is handy for making lace, but for what we're about to do, it's bobbin weight thread and our typical embroidery thread on top. Now I'm just going to go ahead and baste that in. All right. So from the stitch out, I can see how straight or crooked I got the bag in there. It seems pretty straight. Just going to pull it out and have a double check on the bottom and sides. The good news is there isn't a straight line in that quilting, so pretty good. Pretty close, pretty close, pretty close. Pretty close. Pretty good is pretty good. Okay, so color step number 3 is that camel colored paisley background. So I'm going to let the machine do its thing. Terrific. We're on color step number 4. Just going to switch that caramel color out. Complete the blue flowers. All right, we've completed the front of that bag. Join me at the cutting table. Okay, now here we are. We are finished the front of the bag, and we can remove some of the basting bits there if we'd like to now. You can leave them for later. They're obvious color-wise. Okay, so again, the tack down stitch that runs along the side and the bottom here are going to disappear into the seam allowance later, so I'm not worried about taking them out. The bright blue elbow here for placement, those we'd like to remove, and then the basting that runs across the top here I'd like to remove. And if it's easier in the hoop, leave it in the hoop. All right. So I've just released that from the hoop. Just going to work at those little bits of blue still stuck in there. I don't think that there's any other basting here that needs to be removed. They all look like they're going to nicely hide in the seam allowance later. So here we go. What we've completed is the front side of the bag. And pretty good placement. Like I said, the good news is there's no straight lines here. So if you were off even just a titch, it does not show. And that's certainly a boon for the beginners. Certainly a boon for me. I can see the base stitch here on the top, the one I want to remove. So magic of television, I hope you don't have to watch me too long. Okay, so as promised, I am going to do a single hooping. For those who are lucky enough to have these jumbo hoops, you can see with that hoop we could have pretty much done the entire bag in one go. But what we're going to actually do is the back side of the bag in a single hooping. So I just want to make sure that I take all the lining away. Make sure it's not going to get caught in anything. I'm just going to use a quick little clip here to keep those all off to the side. And there are some reference marks in the large embroidery. Just going to pull some of the lint off of here. Don't want to stitch that in. All right, so this is my basically 10 5/8 by 10 5/8 or 272 millimeter by 272 millimeter hoop. I'm going to take it, put it in the machine, and do the first stitch out. So color step number 1, I've left the blue in. It might be a little easier for you to see on camera. All right, so color step number 1 does a lovely rectangular placement line. The instructions are super clear and easy to follow if you are multi-hooping with the 5x7. All right, so what we've got here, still a little hard to see on camera, is a placement line. It's a lovely big rectangular box, actually. Now the instructions for multi-hooping, if you only have the 5x7 hoop, you can see there's the two halves would fit in there. They're terrific. My instructions should never subvert Kimberbell's. They've done a great job. And certainly our instructions are not meant to be used without the Kimberbell instructions. So what we need to do here, we've got the lining attached to the already embroidered side. Then we have this whole side here. Now what we'd like to do is we're going to place the half of the bag inside the box. The placement lines here. The directions for not multi-hooping are not as glorious as the ones for multi-hooping, because of course if you're new to this, you need that help and support. So I'm just going to push the bag nice and firm. Onto that sticky wash away stabilizer. Okay, so we've centered it nicely in that background placement line. Then we're going to take this back to the machine. Meet you there. Now I know that the quilting color is the camel. I'm going to switch to the camel now for color step number 2, but just in case I don't get it all unpicked later when I need to. Because right now it's blue, and the blue will stand out a lot. And I'd like it to disappear if I miss unpicking some of this next placement line. Or tack down, pardon me. The first line is placement. Then you place your backing. Then you do a tack down. So color step number 2 is tack down. Now, if you believe your placement had a little bit to be desired, maybe you got it in there crooked, maybe too high, too low, fabulous news. You can unpick that basting, reset that in the Aquamesh sticky, and go again. No harm, no foul. I'm pretty happy with the singular placement here. I'm going to go ahead with color step number 3, which is that whole Paisley background. Okay, so we've got our beige background fill in there. I'm going to switch my thread up to the blue. So this is the joy of having a machine that takes much larger hoops. Quite often there's some lovely large projects that we can do that don't require multi-hooping. Of course, no machine can do a 3-foot embroidery, so there's always multi-hooping. So this is color step number 4, and it will be the flowers. Alrighty, I'm running out of bobbin thread. So I just moved ahead here so that I have just some straight stitches and not the beautiful satin stitch. And then what I like to do is go back at least 10 stitches. Looks like I could probably go back even a few more here. Remove my hoop. Put that new bobbin in. Now, it depends on your machine if you have the ability to tie off. I do on this machine, so just gonna re-thread here. So I'm going to just do a little tie off, and then I'm going to overlap about 20 stitches. 10 can be sufficient. That straight stitch is hidden under the satin stitch, so I'm happy to go back a little further. All right, so color step number 5. This creates the hole by which the strap is strung. So in the original instructions, Kimberbell used colored fabric that matched the flower, and here we go. We're going to make these little cubby holes. So I did use lovely terracotta to go with my terracotta flowers in the beginning, and I could use blue in this one, but I think that I am going to try tone on tone to the background. So I'm going to switch out from the blue thread. If I was going to use blue fabric, I would stick with the blue thread, but I'm going to switch to cream colored fabric that's a little closer match to the bag rather than the embroidery. See how I feel about that. So color step 5 here is actually a rectangle. And if you're a long-time sewer like me, this might mean bound buttonhole box is quite similar. So this is the cream colored fabric. I'm feeling that it's maybe a little light. It's a little brighter than I want. But I'm just using quilter's weight cotton, and I've actually put a little bit of interfacing on the back, or a fusible woven stabilizer. Just going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, and I'm just going to see north, south, east, west placement. So put that down there. And then I'm going to add a little bit of tape so it doesn't jump or move while we're stitching it. The instructions do not say to put any stabilization in there. The original one that I did in the other bag had a really heavy dose of starch because it would just turn that much nicer. So this time I've decided to try it with some interfacing. So I'll let you know how I feel about it. At the end of the day, I may tell you don't do it, but I'm running a test and I'm willing to be your guinea pig. So wrong side of fabric, face down, so right sides together. And then color step number 6 is a second box on top of that first one. Done in quite a heavy stitch, so you can see it quite clearly on the screen. So the interesting thing is, whether it's in the single hooping or the multi-hooping, we're going to work on one hole at a time. So the next step on this is to take it to the cutting table, and we're going to slit it open and 2 little Y points at each end. You can do that with a rotor cutter or scissors because we're actually going to create a hole now. So meeting you at the cutting table. We're just going to go ahead here and make a slit up the center with 2 little Y points at each end. The diagram in the Kimberbell notes is fabulous. I'm going to start the hole with my rotary cutter. I'm going to slip in here with some really good scissors. Now the box doesn't actually have corner points, it just has a curve. So these don't turn the same as those of you who remember maybe making bound buttonholes at school, at home ec. Maybe you went on to be a clothing maker. So these don't turn as expected. They don't have a fierce point. No, I'm just checking. Get close to the stitching, but not into the stitching. Now the tricky bit here, we're going to turn this over. I'm going to remove this tape. Flip this over, and we're going to carefully push this through. So essentially we're bringing that fabric through to the back. Now, this is where the wool mat comes in, or my embroidery press cloth. I'm keeping it quite thick and firm. I may actually even fold it over one more time. It's going to slip under here, and we're going to press this out the best we can. Now, something rather interesting. Be sure you're using a dry iron here, because if you don't, the steam can actually blow a hole into your water-soluble stabilizer. The heat doesn't seem to bother it, but certainly the moisture will. So this is a little different than what we would like to see typically as a seamstress. If you have a clapper handy, this would be the time to push that down. It's a lovely piece of hardwood that when you have things like this, like heat and steam are your friend in pressing. I'm just gonna let that sit for a minute. And while it's still hot, I'm gonna get in there with the clapper and hold it in place. So I'm giving it a little bit of pressure, and the clapper removes the heat and sets the seams. So as that cools and sets, it's going to be just a little nicer. And the thing that bound buttonholes don't do is have this little lip on the edge, but the roundness of this, rather than sharp points, creates a bit of a lip there. Not my favorite. I would prefer to see the wrap completely around, but that's just a seamstress in my head telling me what to do. Now, once you've got that flip turned, pressed, we're going to tape that so that it doesn't flip back. And I'm going to just put that little spacer in behind there. So we want to set that out where we would like to see it. And remember, if you stitch through this tape, it's fine. So I've got that spacer under there, so I feel free to press a little harder because I'm not trampolining on the hoop. There's something there giving me support, so I'm actually working on a solid surface. So hopefully you get that flipped around. Happy about those sides. We could go in and tape those ends up too, I believe. I think that might just make for a little tidier turn. For the digitizers in the crowd, you could maybe go in and make that more square. You could edit it if you like. But for the average embroiderer, it's going to turn out lovely. It's going to turn out exactly the way it was designed. So normally I tell you not to press hard, and I still wouldn't press hard here, but I'm pressing a little more than I normally do because I have this wedge under here that's holding it up. So now I can flip over this way and go to town pressing that tape in place. So now I've got that kind of outline, and it's the kind of tone on tone rather than that blue or that coral fabric there. So once that's all taped up, all right, now that we're all taped up, you're going to take the right side of the fabric here, and you're going to put that centered over that hole. Again, you're going to tape that in place so it doesn't wiggle out while you're stitching. There we go. I may just put that little wedge in there while I'm working on it, just to keep things from springing. You can see now that hole. Has been filled in. And to take this back to the machine. Welcome back to the embroidery machine. So I've got that back on. Color step number 7. It's going to stitch around this area. It's a small U that goes around the buttonhole. Or I guess it's a belt hole. I'm doing it in the same color as the Paisleys. If you wanted it to vanish more, you might pick a more muslin color. Now, here comes the belt. So in your package, there are 2 pieces of belt strapping. The instructions are very clear about which piece goes in where. If you are working in a single hoop like I'm working in now, there's a good solid bunch of written directions towards the end of the instruction file. If you are working from the multi-hooping, there's very clear directions on which side of the strapping goes through first. So, working away here, this little bit here will stop the opening to the back end here. You're going to grab the longer piece of strapping and you are going to insert it into the hole. Now, the important thing there is it asks you to insert that by about a 1/2 inch, and that's really hard to guess. So, this is where the water-soluble marker came in to play. Remember way on? Okay, so from the top down here, you want to be about a half inch away. Yep. So I've marked the 1/2 inch there. That tells me exactly how far I'm going to stuff the belt into that hole. Till that 1/2 inch mark is inside the hole. I'm going to center the strapping in the hole from top to bottom here. And I can see the blue line has gone all the way in there. And it helps me to keep the strap straight. We're going to finish the other side of the hole. Now, it might be in your best interest to tape this down, but the backing here is sticky, remember? So I can kind of tape it in place from the underneath. Use what you have. Color step number 8. Then you want to make sure that your strap is not going to impede progress anywhere else on the hooping. So just loop it out of the way where it won't get caught on anything. And then we'll proceed to do the exact same thing on the other side. Alrighty, so we've got that placement line up there. We're going to take this right side down. Remember, one of the easiest ways, fold that in half, wrong sides together, put it in the center of that hole, and you can see north and south. If you're centered, let that flip open. Okay, we're finished stitching that. Moving over to the cutting table again. I'm going to use a smaller rotary cutter just to start that hole in the middle. If it makes you more comfortable to put a ruler in there, by all means. Just a way to start this. I'll get my scissors in. Do that same Y cutting. So I'm just supporting the frame of the hoop, trying not to put any pressure on the hooping itself. You don't want to distort that. And then I just turn it so that I have a better visual. This is when you really know if you love your scissors or not, if they cut all the way to the tip. Remember, cut right up to the thread, but not through the thread. That introduces a whole new ball game. You might have to take it to the machine and give it a little repair. All right, so remember now, just going to give this a little finger press. This can help encourage to the back. So I'm just going to finger press all 4 sides. And I'm going to gently put, I'm going to drop my little placeholder in there. And I'm going to use my finger, gently start that. Going to pull that through. Be careful with the hooping. Remember, you don't want to displace it. Then, got that kind of out of the way, I'm going to get in here with that little iron on top of that mat. I am on my cutting table and cutting mat, but the heat's not going to go through there for the length of time I'm going to hold. So once I feel that I've got that warm, I'm going to get the clapper in there. I'm not pressing hard enough to bounce the hooping, and then I do have that wedge in there that's keeping this essentially flat. But I'm just going to let the clapper pull the heat out of that. Remember, no moisture. The steam can blow a hole in your stabilizer, and we wouldn't really want to be having to deal with that right now. But on the offhand, that something untoward happened to you, I would cut this corner off. It's a pretty nice chunk on here. And then maybe you have some left over from your hoopings earlier. And I would peel this off and say I put a steam hole here. Then I could slide this on here gently and make a bandage. But let's save that for in case of emergency and not today. No steam and you won't have to deal with bandages. Okay, so that one went really nicely. I quite like that. So our next step is to tape it down. So I think I'm going to repurpose the tape from the other side. We now really know where we're stitching here and where the tape is going to get stitched in. So that's kind of a nice reference point for us all. So there. Then right side down. And I'm going to put another bit of tape there. If the tape has flipped over or twisted anything and you've got a sticky edge that's up, go ahead and get rid of that because it can grab onto the embroidery unit and tear all of that up into a royal mess that you wouldn't want to deal with later. Here we go. So just going to grab a bit more tape for this side. That looks pretty good. You can see the end of the strapping in there, that 1/2 inch. So got that. And now I'm just going to go in here and press a little firmer on that tape than I would have the other direction, just to make sure nothing's going to slip or flip. Remember to keep this out of harm's way. And back to the embroidery machine. Okay, here we are. Back at the embroidery machine. Just going to slide the hoop into place. Make sure that previous strapping's out of the way. Make sure the rest of the bag is up out of the way. And we're just going to go ahead with that sort of half U there, or I guess it's a full U, half circle. Alrighty, so I've gone and marked the short strap now with that 1/2 inch reminder mark. And we're going to slip that into this side till we've got that 1/2 inch in there. I'm going to center the strap north-south. I'm going to use the aqua mesh sticky back there to hold it in place. I could use tape, and maybe your sticky's not as sticky as you hoped it would be. You can absolutely tape that down. So now we're going to do the other half U and complete that circle, or half circle, which is a U, but it will complete the circle around the hole now. And there we go. That completes the embroidery portion. So now we've embroidered the front, the back, and we've inserted and got the belt working for us. Now everything from here on out is sewing. The directions in the Kimberbell folder are very well done. Alrighty, so what we're going to do, we're going to remove this from the hoop, trim away the stabilizer. It's quite nice to trim this way. You can see where you're going. The hoop kind of gives you a third hand. I'm just going to go in and remove all this tape. It's done its job brilliantly for us. There's the other end of the belt sticking out there. Okay. So what you want to do before we dive into all the machine stitching is we're going to take this and we're going to rinse it. And don't worry too much. All the edges here are finished. So there'll be no excess spraying or anything. So I don't actually close my scissors up and down here. I just slide them through the stabilizer, and there's enough power there to cut it out. So while we have this in this shape here, I'm going to take and rinse away all this wash away stabilizer, front and back, and then I'm going to let this hang to dry, and then in a few hours or on the next day, we'll go in, we'll create a fully lined bag. So, but through the magic of television, I'll be back momentarily. But what I'm going to do in between is I'm going to go rinse all that stabilizer away. So do head to the laundry room or the kitchen sink, wherever you do that sort of work, and rinse your bag, let your bag dry, and then I will meet you back here and we'll carry on with the final steps. Hey everyone, what a difference a day makes. I've got my belt bag all rinsed out. It's dry. Hopefully yours is rinsed and dry. And now we've got some sewing to do. So I will meet you at the cutting table. I'll show you how to mark it up for the next few steps. Then we'll sew it up. Kimberbell instructions here are awesome, but intimidating. There's a lot of them. The instructions are quite thorough. So hopefully the video helps, and some of you will be happier with the visual instructions. Some of you read instruction better than video instruction. Whatever works, that's great. But don't let the instructions intimidate you at this point, because there is a lot of them. And that's because there's a lot of little things going on here. And Kimberbell's been fabulously thorough. So mine might seem simpler, but they're the same. So this part now, we're in our instructions, part 5, finishing the belt bag and attaching the buckle. So we're starting in part 5 today. I hope that you enjoy this. A couple of things tips I might suggest. When you're rinsing out the water-soluble stabilizer, don't use very hot water. Use a warm water. You use less water if you soak the item and let it all dissolve and sink to the bottom. Then take your project out. So it just needs to be covered in water, shallow. I just have an old plastic tub in my laundry room sink. So it's big enough to hold the project, but doesn't take a lot of water to soak something like this. Then I just let it sit there and soak out. And then once I feel like the stabilizer's dissolved and sunk to the bottom, then you can rinse it. Alternatively, you could put this in a laundry bag and put it in with your regular wash. It won't hurt your laundry. It'll absolutely take all the stabilizer right on out of there. Whatever works for you. Years and years ago, one of the people I took a class from had lived in the country and had the whole other septic system, not living in the city, and water was precious, and you didn't want to fill up your septic system with boatloads of water for no reason. So she used to put everything like this that needed soaking into her wash machine. She'd fill the wash machine, just let it sit in there. Then she would take it out, and then she would use that tub full of water to do the next load of laundry. So it's not necessary to rinse this with running water. That's probably the fastest way to remove the stabilizer, but the least friendly to the environment. So a couple options for you there. Then you could let it dry, you could iron it dry. Don't use hot though. Some of the water solubles kind of turn into egg drop soup, and they kind of get gummy and balled up in the water. Something warmish is your friend, and if you put it in a warmish tub and just let it sit overnight, it's going to get cool. The stabilizer still dissolves in a cooler temperature, but in some of the stabilizers over the years, I've noticed that the hot water makes them get all gummy and gooey and kind of weird. So just a little tip from me to you, depending on what water soluble you're using. If you're new to water soluble, this is the information I have for you. So join me at the cutting table. We're going to get moving on our next steps. All right, welcome to the cutting table. I've got my pressing board here. Just going to give the project a quick little press after being rinsed. Make sure that this is all flat. Sometimes embroidery doesn't like to be pressed on a hard surface. So remember when we were in the hoop and we were using the embroidery pressing sheet? It's kind of a thick, fluffy, heavy wool, heavy felt feeling piece of material. And just take our time, press the wrinkles out if you happen to have any. You want to take your time in this because once we're done here, it's all going to be to the inside and this won't be easy to access. There might be a little bit of tidying up here. This is a little bit loose here. That was one of the marking stitches for basting. You might find removing bastings or other markings, thread markings anyway, at this point it'll be a little easier. So go ahead, take a moment here, tidy things up. These could get a little wrinkled from that rinsing. Get those nice and flat again. If anything needs a little bit of clap, just to be a little flatter. Embroidery, if you're fairly new to embroidery, you should press embroidery face down. This little press sheet is magic. If you have some little bits of rumple in your embroidery, they come out so nicely. Face down into this pressing sheet, you can eliminate any minor wrinkles or puckering that you might see in your project. Still have a little bit of basting showing. So take your time, tidy it up, and then we'll move on. Now we've got some markings to do here. And I have to tell you that I did struggle a little bit here. So the best way to achieve success is make sure that you lay your project out exactly as it's shown in the pictures, in the diagrams. Get our zipper pull to the top. Now there's a water-soluble marker and a little ruler or measuring. Okay, so here we are. Water-soluble marker, a little sewing gauge. You don't need anything too large. The markings here are quite small. So the first marking is 1.25 inches down from the raw edge of the bag on the zipper, and you're just going to mark at 1.25. So you can set the gauge up to do that. Put the mark there. And that mark is actually on the zipper. And then we're going to do the same from the other end. Now, the instructions have us do a whip stitch by hand, so needle and a thread, and all we're going to do is stitch around over the zipper teeth here. I'm always quite happy to do that in my machine. So join me at the machine and I'll show you how I would stitch that. I'm just going to put a zigzag foot on. I'm just going to select a standard zigzag on my machine. And make sure everything's flat out of the way here. I can see that marking through the zipper tape. I'm just going to put that mark in the center of the hole of the zigzag foot. Let's see if oh, the camera's been bumped. Close your eyes. Okay, I'm hoping you can see that. I'm going to go in on the zigzag and I'm going to increase the width to a 6 on my machine. And on this machine, I can actually take the length straight down to 0 because I'm just going to stitch in place. And I'm going to just do a little tie off there. Cut the thread, and you can see I've got nice little thread. Instead of the metal zipper stop here, we have a thread zipper stop, which is much softer and safer. All right, so now I'm going to turn it around to do the other end. Now, we don't want to do the zipper stop here with the zipper head way over here. We're actually just going to move the zipper head down, line those two marks up side by side. And center the teeth, and the teeth should be touching. And then we're going to go ahead and make a thread stop. Do a little tie off here, cut the thread. So you can do that by machine or by hand, whichever one makes more sense to you. I like my machine. So now I have that thread zipper stop right there, and my zipper can't go past. And I have one at the top and one at the bottom. So there's our new stops. All right, so super simple, by hand or by machine, your choice. Now we've got a little bit of prep to do for the next couple parts. Kimberbell's instructions have you grab your straps here, bundle them up, then you can wrap with some tape here. Just want to keep the strap itself to the middle of the bag and away from the seam allowance out here for later. You can, if you like, some clips. I'm just going to toss a clip in there for the moment to hold it for me. That'll hold that in place, and then we can just grab a bit of tape and wrap it around so that it doesn't break free on us. Just need to manage the tails. Bit of Kimberbell paper tape. Sneak that underneath there. Just wrapped it around the strap and a little bit onto the bag to help hold it in place. Just a little bit of management. All right. Now, we're going to take the front and the back of the bag and the lining, and we're just going to match the raw edges all the way around. You can pin that, you can clip that. If you're freewheeling like some of us, you don't have to do either. But you know, I am teaching at the moment, so if it was just me, I'm a bit loosey-goosey. I mightn't even pin. I might hold it as I go. But, you know. Here we go. Just going to pin the bottoms together. Now, sometimes these linings aren't as, I found them not to be quite as square as you might hope for. You know, you're just going to have to do the best you can with what you have. Make it work. The lining is going to disappear into the bag, never to be seen again. Now, when you get up to the zipper, this is where things get a little bit fun. I'm going to open the zipper a little bit. I can still reach in there and open that. It just lets this side relax. This side's always going to be closed, so it's a little bit different. So on the left side here where they're loose, and you've got your lining to the top there, the instructions have you turn the teeth towards you and pin those flat. Just gonna, I think we're where we should be. Now I tend to pin with the heads to the outside because I never know what side I'm sewing from. I like to be able to see the heads from either direction. This can look and feel a little bit odd. Trust in the process. So there, the side of the bag, the side of the lining, and the zipper teeth are towards the bag. Okay. And you want to keep those two lined up. So pin carefully. Make sure you can see the head of the zipper so that you can remove it when necessary. And now this other side's a little trickier because the zipper isn't separated. And the teeth don't really lay flat. So the same as the other side. Push the tape towards the lining, teeth towards the bag. As flat as you can get it, given that they are three-dimensional teeth there. Okay. So the pictures in the Kimberbell notes are fabulous. So our next step here, we are going to sew all the way around the bag and leaving a gap here in the lining. If you're the kind of person who will sew this whole thing closed and then have to unpick it, you can give yourself some reference points. I've just put a little bit of the wash away pen there. Sometimes in my life I've used the only red pins I use. This is where I want to stop and start. So everything in between, I never use the red pins for anything but my stops and starts to remind me. All the other ones are green, pink, yellow, white. I have two red ones here. And I have those blue marks to help remind me that I am not sewing here. You just need enough room maybe to get your fingers in there, your hand, whatever you're comfortable with for later when we turn it. Now we're going to go back to the sewing machine, and it's recommending a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I can tell you, it really doesn't matter what size the seam allowance is, but you have to remain consistent. And the lining is a little bigger in this bag on this side. So I'm going to carry on with 3/8 inch on my bag here. And then when I get across the border here from the bag to the lining, I'm going to watch and see how wide that seam allowance is, and then I'm going to consistently carry that down the lining because my lining is a hair bit. So I'm going to do a little bit of compensating. This side, the bag is almost the same as the bag, so I'm not as worried about it. Sorry, my pin came undone. I'm just going to reset that pin. There we go. So you may have to compensate if the lining and the bag aren't identical. So I'll meet you at the sewing machine. Alrighty, here we are. Kimberbell, the notes say 5-inch opening. I don't need 5 inches for my hand, but you have to make the choices, do what's right for you. I'm going to select a straight stitch now. That has a little bit of a bar tack. You can sew from either side, whichever you want. Just flip this over because I had those nice blue markings there. And I'm going to just start here with the little bar tack. And on this machine, from the needle to the edge of the foot is about a 3/8 of an inch. So that's what I'm going to use as my marking. And if I need to pop in there after make any adjustments, I will. I'm just going to now remember the teeth when we get here to the teeth. There to be facing the bag. You might have to just manipulate that down a wee bit. And you remember, you can easily cut zippers and you can easily sew into those zipper teeth. But do just take time, be cautious. Make sure everything is still rolling along. The inside here, the belt strap is enough over. You want to have, of course, close to the 3/8, but it might not be consistent all the way around if your lining is not the same size as your bag. It's pretty darn close. Just be consistent. Let's push the belt a little more out of the way here. So manage the zipper teeth. They should be facing towards the bag. Make sure you don't sew over your pin. And this is where my bag is bigger. My bag lining is bigger than the bag. So compensating here, I can see that the edge of the foot is not on the edge of the fabric. It's on the edge of the serging that's on this bag. So I'm just going to carry on down the side of the bag. My new and improved seam allowance. Bring up to the mark I made earlier. Just do a little reverse there. Cut my thread. So it's roughly a 3/8 inch all the way around. All right, now we're heading back to the cutting table. We need some more marks on our bag here. The new marks that we're going to put down are all in the 4 corners. And to be consistent, we're measuring from the sewn line. So not from the edge, but from that sewn line. If with your ruler you can't easily see through, then you could actually go and give yourself a little bit of color. I'm just going to put the little bit of blue ink on top of this stitching so I could clearly see it through the ruler. And then we're going to put our ruler here on 3/4 of an inch and 3/4 of an inch. So we're drawing a box into the bag at 3/4 inch. There's a part of the bag design is this box to bottom, they call it. And we're going to box the top as well. So it's what gives the pouch a nice dimension and a little bit of shaping. So we're going to box the tops and the bottoms. So to do that, we're going to draw these 3/4 inch boxes. And I'm going to do it exactly the same way on all the corners. So I have consistent results. It's really hard to see my cream on cream stitching. So I'm just gonna mark that in there so I can see it. And then 3/4 inch box there. And remember the lining, I had to compensate that one side. Doesn't matter because we're using the stitched line to measure from. And just remember, if your project looks like Kimberbell's pictures, you've got it, you've got it. Okay. Give myself just nicer to see reference line. And then 3/4 inch box to the inside of my project. Making them all the same way. We'll keep it consistent. Alrighty. Now, Kimberbell instructions have us going to do a reinforcement stitch here because we're going to cut these boxes out. And so there is no back tacking or securing here and here. So it asks for that. You can actually sew 1 inch from here all the way to 1 inch from here because you're going to cut this out. So you don't have to stop, start here and stop, start here. You can start here, sew around those corners again to give that reinforcement because you are going to cut this away. And I just find it easier to do one pass than two. So the reinforcement is just so that the stitching doesn't fall out once you cut into it. And like I said, I'm just going to start 1 inch higher over here. Just going to sew around that corner. Stop about 1 inch past. Same thing on this corner. Needed to make minor adjustment there, about 1 inch past. Gonna cut my thread again. Do the same reinforcement. Wee bit. Go. Reinforcement all the way around. Now, I can do this sitting here, but these little corners that we just marked, we're going to cut those right on out. So, just going to go ahead and trim those out here. Take a minute. Be as accurate as you can. It's going to matter in the next little bit. And I've got the 2 done on the lining here. So while I have the more close-up camera, I'm trying to show you what's going on. So we've got that corner cut out there. Now we're just going to pick this up and sort of open and pull it so that the seam allowances come to each other here. Then we're going to make a straight line across that cutout. You can take your seam allowances, one to the left, one to the right. You can open them, whatever makes you happy. There, I'm just going to put a little pin there to hold this in place for me so you can see. Now we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam on these open spots on all 4 sides. So maybe we'll have a little magic of a television here. We'll cut all 4, pull all 4 into place, pin them and stitch them. Alrighty, so it's a 1/4 inch. I'm just going to switch my machine over to a nice 1/4 inch. Now, I sew these a little bit differently than some people. I'm going to start here in the middle. I'm going to sew all the way to this fold. Then I'm going to go all the way back to this fold, and then I'm going to come in the middle. And what that will allow me to do is not have a heavy back stitch at both ends, which can sometimes ruin the shape of the corner. So somewhere about the middle, I'm going to start with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Sometimes I will go right to the edge and then just back stitch all the way because I can see the 1/4 inch quite clearly. So I'm going all the way to the back of that fold in reverse, and I'm coming forward to where I started originally with a wee overlap but no back stitching. And it's just a nicer, tidier way of doing those corners. Some of our machines don't like those edges. They get grabbed and pulled down in the hole. So this is just the way that I like to do it. Whatever works for you. Okay, so we have all 4 of those corners on the bottom, lining and bag, boxed. Now, Mimi, at the cutting table, we have a little more marking. This is the part that I struggled with the most, everyone. And when I had to do some stitching here, I had a little bit of some fudging to do, but it all looks beautiful. So no fear. Okay, so we're going to place our bag out like this. And now we are going to mark a 1.5 inch by 3/4 inch rectangle from the sewn line on each end of the zipper pouch. So the whip stitching is just inside here. The Kimberbell shows it marked. You can't really see it from here at the moment. You just have to trust that it's where you put it. And we're going to do essentially a 3/4 by 3/4 inch box here and here. So that'll be 1.5 inches long and 3/4 of an inch in from that stitching line. Okay, so just gonna take a quick peek in my bag here. Make sure you can kind of see where that bar tack is there. The hardest part is determining what you consider the middle here. Do you consider the zipper the middle, the top stitching? This is what flummoxed me. If you have a small ruler and you were happy with it, by all means carry on with it. I've kind of decided that the middle of my zipper was where I center the 1.5 inch in both directions. Works out a bit funny on the lining, but it sews up perfectly well. So 3/4 of an inch in and up from the center and the sewn line. And same. Oh. So got that kind of rectangle there, which is actually in essence 2 of the square boxes from earlier. That just happened to meet here. Coming around on this other side, work from the same measurement, depending on what you called the middle. Because from the outside, you'd like them to be reasonably similar when you're looking down at the pouch. So try to remember what you called your middle, whether that was the zipper T, whether that was the seam, whatever you decided was the thing. It's a bit scary, this next bit. There we go, and there we got both ends done. Now we can take that back to the sewing machine and reinforce like we did earlier. So it's 1 inch from here and 1 inch from here. from the box itself that we just drew. You can draw a line or stitch a line right across because all of this is cutting out after. So you don't actually need to make two separate stitches. Then the super scary part is we're going to cut those out. Okay, I'm heading back to the machine to do my reinforcing. This is the this is the simple part. We're just going to put that reinforcement line in there, right on top of the previous one, previous stitching. I need to recenter my needle. Back to where it was originally. There we go. So that inch up to that box, and then we're going to cut. You can sew right past here because we're chopping that out later. And then we're going to go 1 inch past that box. Cut our thread. And this is my compensated side. Stitch right on top of that previous seam. 1 inch up to that box. I'm going to carry on right over the zipper because that's all going to be cut out. So I get here, then I'm going to go 1 inch longer there. Cut my thread. Here we go. All right, so scary, scary. I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut on that blue line that I just drew. Sneak a peek in there, see if I can see my, yep. I'm going to just cut in here, cut across here. I know, so scary. And you're just cutting into that beautiful embroidery we just got in there. Just take your time though. And then we're going to cut right across there, and now I can see where my my little reinforcement bar tack is. There we go. Scary, scary. Now we have a hole in our bag, but you can see, hopefully you can see, there's my bar tack. That's protecting my zipper and keeping it closed. So a nice thread bar tack instead of that heavy duty metal one. Now the fun part here is I'm going to stick with this camera because it's a little closer up for you. You're going to pull the lining box together. You could put a pin in there or a clip for the moment, but you want to just want to pin that closed there. So I pulled the lining box, and now you're going to pull the bag box. And this is where it got a little dicey for me the first time around. I'm just going to grab those corners. And I found that they didn't really want to lay very flat. And you might have to just massage and manipulate till you get those edges together. It's all a bit stiff and lumpy up here with the zipper and the seams and all that going on. And then what you're going to do is take the two sides and sandwich it together. Hopefully that makes sense. And then you're going to sew across all of it together at once. So I've got the one box bottom on top of the other box bottom. I don't need to sew that tab really in there. Could push it out of the way if you like. Oh, my lining pulled away. And again, if you can, I like to start in the middle. And remember, there's a lot of seam allowance in there and a lot of zip in there. I'm going to sew all the way to this end. And then I'm going to slowly, carefully backstitch. And if that's impossible, you can swing the bag around and carry on that seam allowance from this direction. Sometimes reversing over bulk is not your happy friend. But with this foot, I have equal distance from left to right. So I'm just going to pivot at the edge there and come back to the middle. And no back stitch, just a small overlap. Go. And now we're going to do the same on the other side. I'm going to go in, cut this out, and box all that. Thick over the zip there. Take your time. That bar tack that we made earlier will be just nearby. If it's too thick for your scissors, cut one layer at a time. Do the heavy layer later. Okay, there's my little bar tack. Yep, I can see it, it's just in there. Sorry for taking that off camera. Just want to see where the zipper is while I'm cutting through it. And again, there's that box. And again, I'm going to grab the lining. I'm going to pull that up, join the holes, make the side flat. Just going to put a pin in there to hold that in place while I get the bag side together. And just have patience with yourself. My job is to figure it out for you. I have to have patience and grace for myself. Yeah, sorry, I just have to pick that up so I can find the corners of the box. Pull those into place there. And basically you're laying all those layers together, the bag and the lining, then doing that, stitching that box together. And in we go. Again, the way I like to start, in the middle. And sew out to this fold here. And if it's easier to manage the ball, spin it around. So back to the other side, stopping at the edge, swing back in, back to the middle, and stop. Now, they tell you to double check to make sure you've caught all those layers there in case something wiggled out. Okay, so here we go. The bottom of the lining's boxed, the bottom of the bag is boxed. Now the top is boxed like this. And there's one last step that seems a little iffy when you're starting. So working on one side of the bag, they want you to grab the lining and the bag and then put the box corners together. And stitch them together, which in my mind didn't work. So I actually pinned them in place, and then I tested the turn, and I'm happy to report that it all went really, really well. So don't pin the bottom to the top. Make sure you go all the way bottom to bottom here. And just line those edges up. If pins are not working for you, if it's all too thick, these little clips are your pal, and then you're just basically going to stitch those together. They can be just tacked. They don't have to be sewn like I just sewed them. So you're just going to tack them together, okay? But you're just going to tack the lining corner to the bag corner. Maybe just a wee bit of back, just in the middle there. That'll hold it plenty good. Just make sure nothing else is caught up in there that shouldn't be in there. Get those edges up together. And I'm just going to basically do a tack in the middle here. It's not part of the construction or anything that we've got going there. You know, this is a bit awkward looking now. But what we want to do is turn the project through that opening in the lining. And remember, we've got that kind of big wad of strapping in the middle there. So just very gently push through. All right. Now that zipper was open, hopefully, from earlier. So that will allow you to push out these corners a little bit. And there's the inside of the bag. There's just the lining. Here's the bottom of the bag. Now, there's a couple things you can do here. You can hand stitch this closed. If you have any 1/4 inch fusible tape, you can put a little bit on this edge here, peel the tape, fuse that closed. I've often done that. Or on a lining that no one's ever really going to see again, or the bottom again, I sometimes will just grab the 2 corners here. Tuck in that seam allowance. You can hit that with an iron if you like. I'm just going to drop a couple pins in here. Just gonna bring the two raw edges up together there. And I've pinned this way, so I'm going to start sewing from here to the other way, just a little tiny edge stitch. So you just want to make sure both folded edges are evenly together, and then I'm going to top stitch that closed. Okay, so here we are. Got the two little folded edges together. I can see that blue marking from earlier. I'm going to just drop my foot there, and my needle's a little behind that blue mark because that's where the opening is. So I'm just going to do a teeny tiny little couple stitches of back stitch right at the opening there. And I'm trying to sew right next to that fold with even less than 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to try to catch both folds right on the edge. Remove my pin as I get there. Eye on the prize, which is to the next blue mark. Barely on the edge. Okay, just a wee bit past that blue mark. My thread. There we go. You can maybe just see it's right on the bitter edge there. Just double check that you caught both sides. Trim those tails, and no one's going to know that from the outside of your bag. And quite often you'll see that in things, lined items that you bought. So I kind of pull that down flat. So it's just a teeny little bump. It's in the bottom of the bag. No one's ever going to see that. Now, our bag inside out. I am going to just turn the whole thing through the zipper hole. You can kind of sneak in there and open it all the way, give you a little more room to turn, and just gently pop the whole thing out here. I'm going to remove that piece of tape. It's done its job. Quite happy about that. And I'm just going to reach inside the bag, push my corners all the way out. And remember, we sewed the lining bottom to the bag bottom. And so that keeps the lining from popping out. When you've got things in here and you're reaching in, the lining does come up but won't come out. So there we go. And then just poke the box corners out on the bag. Okay, beautiful. If you need them a little more popped out and you can't get there from the inside, you can always use my stiletto trick from the outside and lift. Alrighty, so here we go. I have a sweet little blue bag to go with my terracotta bag. All right, the last little bit, super simple now. So, long strap, raw edge. It says optionally you could add some fray check to these. These have been cut and sealed. When you get this package open, you can feel this edge has been sealed. The other thing, candle flame, a little lighter, you can melt the edge. Be very careful if you do that. Otherwise, some fray stop, fray check, just a little bit on the edges. Let it dry. Now here's our buckle package. And take those pieces out. There's actually 3 pieces in here. The slider, and then the buckle itself. And the buckle has a protective coating on it that you're going to have to just peel off there. It's nice to make sure that in shipping and transport, packaging, and all those things, there's no damage. So when you squeeze that, there's 2 pieces to the buckle, okay? All right, so I have identified the long strap and the end of it. And what the slider here, what we're going to do, follow the Kimberbell instructions and you won't run into trouble. So this is the front of the bag. Long strap is on the right. You have your buckle. You're going to bring that through the second slot around there. Oops. Forget so we have the slider on there. And then just to give yourself about 1 inch here. Pardon me, 1 inch, a foot. Okay. Then we're going to move on to the inner and outer buckle. Separate those 2. And on the long strap here, I'm going to grab the inner frame. That's this one here. And we're going to insert the strap through the slot in the diagram and come back through. And there we go. And then back into this slider adjustment. And this keeps that tail end from flapping around, getting all weird and sloppy. Ta-da! Now then we've got the front of the buckle frame. We have our short strap. We're going to go through here. Actually leave a couple inches on this end. You can trim off excess. If you're a small framed person, there's a lot of strap here. But for some of us, we might need all this length. So we've got the buckle here. We've got about 2 inches on the end here. Now, what we're going to do on the short strap here, if this is not a good seal, you can seal this, put some fray check on it, and there's a bit of a hem happening here. I want you to roll it a half inch. I've rolled half inch. Then I'm going to take this and finish that. I'm going to leave about 1 inch here. So this is where you might want to remove some of this length. You can just pin this, clip this, whatever. works for you. And then try this on if you're making this for yourself. And if you're making it for someone else, now would be the time to have them try it on. Then we'll take this to the sewing machine and we will stitch this down. And then the same on the other end, on the wrong side of the long strap here. You can fold this under half inch, and also hem that part if you like. Pin it or clip it for the moment. Maybe try the buckle on. See how things are fitting. What I'd like to show you is if you leave all of this strapping on there, it's going to quick pin this. Maybe I'll clip it. Okay, we have one last tip to complete our belt bag. I have switched out the thread on the machine to a lovely beige color that matches the strap pretty well. And we just need to hem these ends. They're going to be a little bit thicker when they're rolled at that half inch as recommended. I'm not sure whether I prefer it rolled under or rolled over. You can make your own choice. The instructions have a suggestion, but of course, that's entirely up to you. Now I'm going to start actually in the middle here and come to the end, go all the way back to the other edge and come back to the middle rather than bar tacking at either end. So from the top or the bottom, whichever makes the most sense to you. If you start in the middle, it actually just makes it a little easier to keep your foot level. In some machines, if you get high centered, coming off of the back here where the foot is quite tipped, it's not going to sew. And chances are the needle will break, which never makes anyone happy. So what we're going to do here is just sew to the end. Stop with the needle down. Now, if it's easy for you, you can use the reverse button. Now, if you're gonna potentially be high centered here, remember on machines like this that have that little black button on the side, push the black button in when the foot is up, drop the foot, and that button will maintain a level for you. So I'm gonna just slowly and carefully stitch all the way to the other fold. Stop there. And I'm going to make my way back to the middle. I'm going to set the leveler. Come all the way back to the middle here. And this is where I'm going to do a little back tacking over top of where I started. And cut that. Trim the tails out. If you don't like the little mess that sometimes happens underneath, you can always pull your thread to the top before you start. There we go. So with the thread that matches the belt strap, it's almost invisible. So that's how we get through the hems on the end there. On the other side, the instructions did have us roll that a half inch under, and then I think it had us roll it twice, but if we're going to stitch through that, there's no reason for it to be rolled twice. It could be rolled once, and that raw edge would be hidden. And you could actually sew a little box around there if you like, just to keep everything flat. Definitely stitcher's choice in this instance, and I will start in the middle again because I'm less likely to get high strung there, and I appreciate not being hung up. So I'm just going slow because I don't want to do it twice. Just kind of fell off the end there. I'm just getting my needle back. To where it was. Tuck everything. Make sure it's even over here. Just grab my handy dandy stiletto. What I want to make sure is that little tail inside there stays inside there. So I'm just going to tuck it. Turn everything around. Carry on the little box. Then I'm going to head back towards the middle where I started earlier. I'm going to do just a small back stitch there. And now it's nicely locked in and sandwiched there. All right, so now we can wear that belt bag. Lovely. Here we are. Okay, just going to put another little clip in this. Now, depending on who you're making this for, you might be happy with a belt bag, belly bag. And then you would have adjust all of your straps and hem to fit so that when you're doing up your buckle, you can grab that, tighten it up. But what we noticed is if we leave this pretty long, some of us here in the shop thought, you know what? I might like this more this way, hanging over my shoulder, because then your camera, your wallet, all of those little things, your cell phone, they'll be right here. Maybe take the stuffing out. But you know, you've camera glasses, all of those little things, we can just drop them in our little pack and they will be right here, right where we need them. So whether you're wearing it on your tummy or over your shoulder, you get to adjust the straps. That's the joy of making your own things, isn't it? All right, so thus concludes the belt bag. I hope to see you again. I hope you're enjoying this series so far. If you have seen some of the other videos and you hadn't been enrolled in those, you can still enroll in those at any time. If you enroll for the whole year, even at this juncture, we have a bonus free design for What's the Buzz keychain. It's adorable. The video is up for that, so have a look. If you are enjoying the videos, and we're going to have the videos all completed and up prior to the release of the design. And if you go, oh my goodness, everyone I know is going to get a bag, a belt bag for Christmas. But some of the blanks, these will be launching close to the month that the design is released. So if you need 10 belt kits and 10 bag blanks, then definitely send us a note and we'll get those ordered up for you. We're not going to stock these heavily. We have an auto shipment that comes, and we'll be able to accommodate several people, no problem. But if you happen to decide this is the in thing for your Christmas and you need more, then we'll be happy to custom order the number you need in well in advance of the design release. So do reach out to us here at mysewingroom.ca. Contact us through order desk at mysewingroom.ca. We'll be happy to help you with your orders, online orders, telephone orders, all of those things. So do see our details below. Remember to like our video, share our video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd love to have you. Leave us a comment, ask us some questions, tell us what colors you're working on. Anything that you need, we're here to help you. Take care for now. See you next time.